And here is a presentation of visual guide plan, our conceptual PlayWorld, presented by Gina and Saima. So I start from our previous observation. Our observation of children's interest was the children was on an excursion to a park, and children had an opportunity to observe ducks swimming in the lake. So they noticed the ducks were floating by themselves, but they raised the question, why can't they float by themselves on the water? So this is forms of learning need that we have identified, and thinking about how we can extend the children's development in the scientific concepts. We carefully chosen this relevant storybook of Alexander's outing and studied this design of conceptual PlayWorld. In terms of the planning of a conceptual PlayWorld, it involves 5 steps. Step 1, selecting a story. Thinking about why we choose this story, because it's a story that it has complex plot and dramatic moments in it, and it involved multiple characters. More importantly, it does involve children's exploration of scientific concepts of forces and movement and mathematical concepts of measurement and length. So it's a great story, to be able to utilize in the situation. And step 2, designing a space. We carefully design a play space to be indoor or outdoor with a table and a tall glass bottle. We have incorporated the boundary sandboard at the entrance of the room and carefully prepare the props. Step 3, and how we can enter and exit the play world. We indicate the word boundary sign, and as well as using the language sign quack quack, and the actions waddle 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 to signify that we collectively enter the play world. And step 4, problems to be solved. There's problem scenario 1 and scenario 2. In the first one, Doc Alexander was trapped down the deep hole, and he needs as urgent help to get out of the hole. And problem scenario 2, a new character being involved, Papi, was trapped down the hole, and he needs urgent help to get out of the hole. So this is the problem that children need to think about, and how they can help the characters to get out of the hole. So in this process, the step 5, teachers during the play world. Teacher is actually actively engaged in the collective imaginary situation. Simultaneously, teachers will, using questions, and prompt children in exploring these concepts to solve the problem. In terms of how play-based pedagogy facilitates deeper levels of learning, we choose to see it from the cultural historical perspective, because play is considered to be culturally constructed and culturally enacted. Children created imaginary situations based on real-world experiences. According to Vygotsky, imitation in role play is not a simple copying of an action, but rather an acting with understanding. So this is an opportunity to enhance their development of their either all kinds of cognitive and social emotional skills in this process. So similarly, Lindquist explained that the reproduction and production, together with children's imagination and creativity, does act as a positive force in the development of play and learning. Specifically, in this event, children are given opportunities to use their imagination and creativity to role-play the characters in the problem scenarios, and during this process, they're actually showing empathy to the trapped character and utilizing their cognitive thinking to problem solve this dilemma. So it is the production and reproduction that are enhancing and deepening the learning of the concepts designed in this event. In terms of the critical reflection of pedagogy strategies, we have utilized the intentional teaching, balanced the roles, and sustained shared thinking as our strategies. So under intentional teaching, we are being responsive to children's interest and finding what their interesting is, and we have been deliberate and purposeful in our decisions, in our planning, according to children's interest. And so we plan and create environments that promote and support children's engagement, their curiosity and problem-solving skills. We try to identify their learning gap and seek to extend their learning more deeply. So this is how we work with intentionality in our work. And in the balanced roles of educators, so it is a balance between child-led and adult-initiated guided play, in which educators, still being educators, try to challenge the children's ZPD and try to dramatize the action, becomes an actor in the eyes of the children instead of a teacher, stepping out of the teacher's role and actively create dialogue between the adults and children, so that children and adults share common play worlds. And at the same time, children's agency and independent thinking, imagination, creativity are respected as they investigate and think of their own solutions. In terms of sustained shared thinking is a strategy that supports children's learning. Think about this shared and sustained interaction and how to structure them more formally in our playful collaborations with children, and and it helps us to explore our engagement in children's play. It also aids us in thinking about how we can collaborate progressively with children. Sustained play opportunities lead to a more sophisticated learning that emerges in different cultural contexts.
In this part of the presentation, I will dive deeper into the sustained shared thinking and collective imagination concepts that underpin Vygotsky's cultural historical perspective. From the cultural historical perspective, children's play is not isolated. As children and adults encounter each other within the play world, children play is joined with the arts and science of adult interests. Our play world is designed to enable both children and adults to engage and actively participate in joint pretense as a means of promoting the emotional, cognitive, and social development of both children and adults. Figure 2 displays the reciprocal relationship of children and adults in the play-based learning, where children contributed their play expertise and adults contributed their cultural experience, as well as targeted STEM and social emotional concepts into the common imaginative play world. Here, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This play world can be reproduced and manipulated at home to promote engaging play-based learning. Here's an example of the imaginative conversation between adults and children who are playing the characters from Alexander's outing during step 4 of our planning. In this conversation, we can see how children actively participate in solving the problem created by the educators within the imaginative setting, while engaging in their imaginative world and contributing their perspective. As mentioned before, our play world is inspired by a moment where children showed interest in the swarm of ducks swimming on the lake at a local park. This sparks the beginning of our planning, as this topic of floating and the theme in a familiar setting such as the park captivate children's attention. This initial observation forms the foundation of our problem-based scenario, making it not just dramatic but also interesting to the children, promoting their active engagement in learning and solving problems. The children were able to transfer their existing knowledge of cultural tools such as umbrellas, fishing lines, and of different animals such as dogs and ducks by making meaningful connections with the real world and their play as they solving their problems. As children interact and collaborate with each other to solve the problem, they also engage in collective imagining with their peers via the use of meta-communicative language, enriching the conceptual play world. The flexibility and open-ended play world overall created a learning environment where children can contribute their enthusiasm, active participation, creativity, and their own imaginative perspectives. The conceptual play world allow adults to immerse themselves as play partners alongside children, linking their interests and promoting engagement as they scaffold children's learning. In the above scenario, children engage in dialogues with an educator who plays mother duck. The educators were able to sustain the imaginary conversation with the children through intentional questioning and responding collectively to the children's imaginary play. Here, the adults also contributed their own existing cultural knowledge and experiences to enrich the learning environment and foster dynamic relationships. It is important that children's voices and agency are respected in the conceptual play world, so instead of bombarding the child with concepts, adults scaffold children learning by introducing new arts and STEM concepts through cultural languages that align with children's interests in imaginary perspective. For example, the teacher guided children by saying, "We are ducks and we can swim," to introduce concept of buoyancy. Therefore, our playworld considers interests of both children and adults, creating a learning environment where social interaction, cultural mediation, and scaffolding can occur optimally. Our conceptual play world also linked to outcome 4. Children are confident and involved learners from the early years learning framework. Here, children develop a range of learning and thinking skills and processes such as problem solving, inquiry, experimentation, hypothesizing, researching, and investigating. Children show evidence of learning by creating and using representation to organize, record, and communicate mathematical ideas and concepts. For example, children can use pencils and paper provided to record the depth of the bottle and figure out how long the fishing line needs to be. Educators can promote this learning by planning flexible learning environments that provide appropriate challenges and encourage exploration and experimentation. For example, educator provided a variety of glass bottles representing different depths and widths of the holes. Children can also manipulate objects and experiment with cause and effects, trials and errors, and motion. For example, they can choose and manipulate given materials, such as pouring water, cutting the fishing line to the correct length to solve the problem. Teachers here can provide resources for young children to explore the properties of materials through manipulating, rotating, collecting, transporting, and positioning. For example, educator provided tools of different physical properties, such as umbrella, water, fishing line. These can be rotated, transported, and manipulated to help solve the problem. By allowing trials and errors, children have opportunities to explore all different possibilities and use reflective thinking to consider why things happen and what can be learned from the experience. For example, children may find out the fishing line they have cut is too short to reach the bottom, where they can reflect on why and the changes that can be made. Here, the educators can help promote the learning by using descriptive and scientific languages and encourage children to use the same to explain their ideas, provides opportunities for involvement in the learning experience. For example, technical words such as length, depth, floating, width, fitting, sinking can be used. Children also show evidence of learning as they engage in culturally relevant objects to test ideas and represent mathematical concepts. For example, children work with everyday cultural objects such as umbrella, fishing lines, etc. Educators' role in this scenario is to listen carefully to children's attempt to hypothesize and expand on their thinking through conversation and questioning. That is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.